Alright, this is going to be a slightly longer video and slightly more advanced. It's not going to be quite a walkthrough solve. I'm not going to explain everything what I do. I'm just going to go through the thought process, my thought process for big cube edges. I picked 6x6 because it's sort of a good middle ground between the 5x5 and the 7x7. Edges really start when you're doing your last commutator, I guess. You can try and preserve some edges before that, but I generally tend not to. But you're executing your last commutator. Whilst you're doing that, you should be looking ahead as to what your first edge is going to be. So even before I execute this, I see these two and this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and execute that, and then just set these two up. Then what I'm going to do is find the next one, and then continue on. So I've bookmarked. I'm going to do these two next whilst I was doing that. And I notice there's no white oranges anywhere here, so I'm going to flip it over, and then the other two are on the other side. And whilst I was doing that, I noticed these, the green and white were paired up, and this one here as well. And I've also worked out that the green and white is not here, so I'm going to flip it over again and continue on with that. And I've noticed these two in the back, so I'm going to keep doing that. Flip it over again because it's not there. And this gets to a point where, a lot of people, what they try to do is to store 4 edges in the top layer. Now that can be good because it actually helps look ahead quite a fair bit, especially if you do 4 in one layer first, and then flip it over, and then most of your last 4 edges are going to be 2gen, and you're not going to have to flip it at all. This can be good, but it's not completely necessary, especially if you have a good flow going during your edges, and your look ahead is good and you're not worried at all. I would say don't interrupt that flow and that look ahead, and just keep storing the edges wherever you want. So what I would do, even though you've got 2 on the bottom here, I see that these two are paired up, so I will store this one on the top as well. And then I can go on to these red ones, even though there's only 2. These two. Now what I might do here is, because I know that there's 3 on the top here, I'd probably store them, I'll store this one up here, and because I saw the green and red, and I know the green and red one was there. So I would do that. And then keep going. We've got the red in the back. And also another thing, what I see quite often as well is that after you do your last edge and you've done all your 8 edges, a lot of people spend a good couple of seconds actually realigning their centers to do the last 4 edges. Whereas what you should be doing is, whilst you're, when you're nearly done the last edge, just take a quick note of which way the slices need to go, so that once you insert it, you can just easily do it without actually worrying about it too much. So last 4 edges. So like with the centers, it's good to be flexible in how you do your last 4 edges. So, I mean, some people, they prefer to do it, solving the inner 2 and then the outer ones, or some people just like to freestyle. So if they see something good, you would solve it. In this case, this is actually a really bad case. This is actually quite complicated, but what I would do is something like this. So I would take this edge out, and I'm building these yellow and green ones, and then insert this broken edge in there, and then hopefully something comes up for the next ones. No, but what we can do is solve this edge by replacing that and flipping it back, and then this isn't very nice either. I mean, it works out. So yeah. The other thing that I would suggest is don't build too many incomplete edges. So sometimes, especially during my solves, I tend to, maybe do three edge pieces and then, move on to something else while storing that in the top layer. And I would, take a mental note and try and come back to it later. But I would suggest against that, unless there's something else really easy comes up and you want to solve that quickly before finishing the last edge. I would suggest against that, because it can be quite confusing. So focus on doing one edge at a time whilst you're looking ahead. So don't make anything too complicated for yourself. And also, I know especially sometimes I see a whole bunch of different stuff a whole bunch of different edges that, you know, are half solved and they look really good, and I try to preserve them. Don't be fussed if you can't preserve everything, because all you're doing is solving one edge at a time, and whilst you're solving them, you know, you'll be things will just pop up, and hopefully you're able to look ahead. So don't be fussed if you can't preserve absolutely, you know, everything during your edges, because that's nearly impossible. Alright, cool.